What up, y'all? It's Joe Budden, here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. You can get up to 100 times your money.
Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code SPOTIFY. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
So the news coming out of the Russian-Ukraine theater is not good. Seems like Russia is taking new territory and, of course, using these hypersonic missiles and chopping down power plants. One report is 1 million Ukrainians have lost energy and electricity just in recent days. So I don't know how this story is going to play out. We know Mr. Trump would like to make a deal, peace deal of some kind or another. So we bring in my good friend General Jack Keane, retired four-star general. He's chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. Of course, he's a Fox News senior strategic analyst and the Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. I was in the room when he received that award in the Oval Office. General Keane, sir, welcome back. Can you make some sense? I mean, it doesn't read well. It reads like Russia is now improving their advantages in Ukraine using some of the American long-range missiles, but that just infuriated the Russians and they're firing back. You know about this a hell of a lot more than I do. How do you read it, sir?
Yeah, certainly. Well, Russia certainly has stepped up their air campaign rather dramatically in recent days. Certainly some of that's in response to the use of long-range ATACMS and cruise missiles into Russia, something the Biden administration never, ever should have restricted, from the beginning. And this is one of the frustrations the Ukrainians are dealing with. I mean, much as you see the Biden administration trying to hold back Israel in the Middle East, micromanaging their operations, holding back weapons and threatening holding back more, they did much the same and even more, having an impact on the Ukrainians. The Russians, in terms of territorial gain, they have for 8 months been trying to take a major city. They have not taken a major city since 22. And the city they focused on is in the Donbass region called Provaz. It's not anywhere near the size of the major cities. But nonetheless, they've been making grinding tactical gains to take this city, as I said, for 8 months. 30,000 casualties a month, Larry. And in October, 57,000. 100 to 150 tanks lost a month. They can only replace 25 to 30 of those tanks out of their industrial base. So they've gone to their bone yards where the former Soviet Union, I mean Soviet Union, has stored their tanks, T-64s from the Cold War days. So there's a lot of challenge that Russia has. In 25, they know their equipment shortages, the impact of the sanctions finally, depressing their economy to a certain degree, not to the degree that we could have done. Certainly if Trump was imposing sanctions, they would be different in terms of scale and enforcement. But nonetheless, they have their challenges. He's likely going to have to go to some kind of mobilization. They've been purchasing their conscript soldiers by just offering them a lot of money. That's going to come to an end because financially they can't keep up with that. So mobilization is in the offing in 25, likely to have some resistance from the population. They've been going to central and eastern Russia to get the conscripts, and where they did the previous partial mobilization, avoiding Western Russia, where the people are more educated, influential, and would likely have serious protest against this war that Putin told them would only take 2 to 3 weeks. So Putin, yes, he has upped this air campaign on the energy infrastructure. You're completely accurate about what that imposes to the Ukrainians suffering, obviously, as winter is coming. Ukraine's had a lot of success in stopping a lot of the attacks, but nonetheless, when you have so many missiles, so many drones coming, a number of them are going to get through and be effective, and they have been. I hope as the Trump team comes in, they really take a look at what is really happening here, that the Biden administration has been holding Ukraine back. We got to stop it. I mean, the issue is Putin. Putin, because of Biden's policy, believes he sees victory on the horizon. And that's his motivation is still the same. Topple the government in Keane, put a stooge in there to run it, and who he had in there before, Yanukovych, who was run out in 2014. He hasn't changed from those goals. And as General Kellogg, who I know very well, gets his arms around this thing, he's going to find Putin resisting anything that's not contributing to those goals. And I think we got to help Ukraine gain some leverage here, Larry, something that the president understands. And that would mean taking the gloves off Ukraine and letting them pound into Russia and push Putin to make some concessions to make a deal. Look, at the Ukrainians didn't want this war. They didn't want it in 2014. They didn't want it in 22, and they certainly don't want it now. And they paid a hell of a price, for this war for sure. Do they want it to end? You betcha they want it to end, but they want it to end, on terms that are favorable to them. And I think that's what we got to kind of focus on going in here. And the Putin that the president is going to be dealing with, well, certainly he's the same person, but he's in a completely different situation than he was 4 years ago. He's a wartime commander now. He's been at it for 3 years. He's got his economy on a war footing, and he has committed to victory over Ukraine. And he is absolutely determined to get that victory. And then, as he has said time and time again, continue to expand into NATO. That is who we're dealing with here.
General Keane, if the Biden administration had wanted to, they could have bled Russia into bankruptcy. First, they did not impose strict sanctions on the oil and gas industry or the bankers to that industry. This is something I covered on the TV show quite a lot in 2022 and 2023. Never. Second, the U.S. and the European Union, think of it as the U.S. and NATO, has control over roughly $300 billion worth of Russian central bank money. Essentially, General, the crown jewels, the reserves of Russia. That money has been frozen, but it remains frozen. It was never distributed to Ukraine or any place else. Any combination of stronger sanctions and or unlocking of the Russian central bank money and distributing it to Ukraine would have bled Russia into bankruptcy. We could have done this in economic terms, and we never did. Your point about, a day late and a dollar short on the military battlefield has always been correct. You and I have talked about this so many times. But I'm just saying in economic and monetary terms, they could have bled them into bankruptcy, and they never did.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. In fact, I've sat next to you on your TV show
Yes.
and heard you say very much the same thing. And, of course, we all know why Biden didn't do that. Oil prices, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he was thinking of his own political future here, I think. I mean, I'm not inside his head, trying to analyze why you wouldn't do something like this when you're trying to protect the very existence of an independent democracy that's friendly to the United States. It's on their frozen assets. I think what really should happen with the Trump team, because going into this, they've been taking the interest from the frozen assets and using it to help fund Ukraine. They've got to seize, with cooperation of the Europeans, because they're holding the assets.
Yeah.
They got to take all of the assets and use that money literally to fund Ukraine in terms of its military capabilities, its financial shortfalls, and also eventually its reconstruction. And that just should be one of the first things the incoming administration has got to make up its mind to do. The second thing I think that can help with the funding, H.W. Bush during the Gulf War had done a fairly creative thing to defray the cost of the United States bearing so much of the burden in the Gulf War. And there were, 30-something plus other allies participating. He established a fund, and he asked the allies to pay into the fund to help defray our costs. So we had not only allies in the region paying into that, but others who were dependent on Middle East oil, obviously, which is what Saddam Hussein was threatening when he invaded Kuwait. We could probably stand and take a look at that, revisit it, and have the Trump team kind of get at that and just take off the board completely the issue of taxpayers' dollars here funding Ukraine. I think that is literally possible with a little imagination going forward. And I think, with the Trump team coming in and his business background and is always looking for something that's innovative and different, that may be a possibility as well to help the Ukrainians and give them a little bit of leverage going into some kind of negotiations. And then, if taxpayers aren't paying the price for it anymore and you take that issue off the board, there shouldn't be a lot of pressure on Ukraine to have to make any kind of deal that may not be favorable to them. That's something we don't want to do. That's the Biden tactic, and we don't. I think we've got to stay away from it.
Yes, I agree. It may be a tough sell, but I think you're right. It's an interesting precedent. But I tell you, it wasn't just me. Robert O'Brien, whom you know, former national security advisor. I had him on the TV show a lot and on the radio. We talked a lot about bleeding Russia's central bank reserves. Those are the crown jewels. That's what they have. You start doing that, General. You could start slowly, but establish the threat and sell off those assets, help the Ukrainians, etc. That's all Russia has, okay? They have oil and gas industry, which we never shut down. Trump would understand that very, very well. And incidentally, drill baby drill should get oil prices down. That would hurt Putin too. But the money, which is something Trump understands very, very well, obviously, using that lever, I think, would bring Putin to the peace table a lot faster. That's all they have. They don't have they don't have a technology industry. They don't have a consumer industry. They got nothing. Their economy is just basically natural resources. That's all they have. There's gold reserves, there's bonds, there's foreign currencies. Congressman French Hill, I don't know if you ever spoke to him. He's a terribly smart guy, former banker, treasury official, dear friend of mine. He's been working on that. We don't have to. We have about $5 billion. Okay, the Europeans are sitting on most of it, but I think the NATO countries could really cooperate. Just the mere threat of bleeding them into bankruptcy would probably help. Anyway, I got to take a break, General. Appreciate your thoughts on this. I want you to come back and help me out on what's happening with Israel, Hezbollah, and Hamas, because I'm reading all kinds of conflicting reports in the papers, and I think a lot of our viewers would want to hear you on this. We're talking to the great General Jack Keane, who's the chairman now of the Institute for the Study of War, Fox News analyst, Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
Larry Kudlow. Now, back to the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking to the great General Jack Keane, retired four-star, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, Fox News senior strategic analyst, and Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. General, I'd like to go to the Israel situation. First, regarding some kind of peace deal, ceasefire, I want to start with Hezbollah and Lebanon. And what I'm reading is that the IDF would like to move further north, the Litani River, but this ceasefire would prevent them from doing so. But then again, who can possibly rely either on something called the Lebanese army, which is almost non-existent, more importantly, Hezbollah? I mean, what kind of ceasefire peace deal is this, really?
Well, I think the Israelis began this many weeks ago when they realized they were going to accomplish their limited objectives here. And so our audience understands when it came to Gaza, the military objective was defeat Hamas as a military organization and then destroy, which is a much more challenging objective, as many fighters as possible. They defeated Hamas as an organization many weeks ago, and now they're continuing to destroy the fragments of what is left. That has never been the objective here. Hezbollah is a much more formidable organization, close to 100,000 under arms, 150,000 rockets and missiles, and they're mostly in central Lebanon. The mission here was to prevent Hezbollah from firing weapons into northern Israel, which displaced 60 to 70,000. They want those citizens to be able to come back and occupy their homes. So the objective was limited, and I think it's a brilliant campaign they ran here in decapitating the leadership for weeks, which we all observed, destroying 60% plus of the rockets and missiles and focusing on their long-range missiles. And then the third thing is, in the 20 miles between the Litani River and the Israeli border is where the Hezbollah infrastructure was located that was doing most of the firing into northern Israel. That infrastructure has been destroyed. Those Hezbollah fighters have either been killed or driven out of the area. So they believe they accomplished that mission, and Hezbollah also believe that they're in disarray. They've never been set back like this since they organized the movement so many, many years ago. And the reality is that even the Iranians told Hezbollah to take the deal. So that's where we are. And the deal is simply this. The Israelis have 60 days to move out of southern Lebanon between the Litani River and the Israeli border, those 20 miles. And Hezbollah has 60 days to do the very same thing, and also no firing into Israel. There has been no firing into Israel. There's been some violation on the ground of the ceasefire in that 20-mile area. But it does take a number of days to get everybody on the same page when you're instituting a ceasefire and get the word out to everybody. So we'll see. I think it has a possibility of holding, because it's clearly in Hezbollah's interest to do this, or they wouldn't have gone to the table. After all, they had vowed that they would never stop fighting as long as the war in Gaza was going on. And that war is still going on, but yet they have stopped fighting here. I don't think Israel really wants to go north of the Litani River. There may be some leaders who want to do that. That's where the strength of Hezbollah is. That would take them months to deal with that situation. Casualties have risen in the Israeli military. Those are issues for them, as they have been in the past, but never like it is to this day. The reserves have been used, and they're exhausted. And so this is actually very much in Israel's favor for this peace deal to work. And here's the issue they have. Lebanese army is supposed to enforce it. The UN was supposed to enforce the same peace deal from 2006, and they were there all these years and couldn't enforce it. That's what the Israelis' concerns are. Will the Lebanese have the capability to really enforce it if Hezbollah wants to violate? The answer to that is no. It's all up to Hezbollah. Do they really want to see this peace deal through, or are they going to come and violate it? At some point, I think it's likely they will violate it, but hopefully not in the near term.
And how about way down south? Where does the Hamas story, where is it now? What does Israel need to do? And what about the hostages?
Yeah. Well, regrettably, the leadership that has taken over from Sinwar is in the very same mindset, Larry, and that is no hostage release until the Israelis are gone from Gaza. And they're not going to be gone from Gaza. I mean, in my talking to the Israeli officials, they have come to the conclusion, and this is not going to be widely accepted, but they know, and I think they're on the right page here, that they believe they will have a multi-year occupation of Gaza to prevent Hamas from regrowing. They believe they have no choice but to do that. They can't turn it over to anybody else because Hamas is just going to regrow. And that's why they put in the Nazim corridor that stretches from east to west, right down across the center of Gaza. And they bulldoze everything in its path, and they're going to set up watchtowers and infrastructure and the rest of it. That's the path I think that they're really on. They haven't announced that publicly. They know there's going to be international opposition to something like that. But, Larry, I think they've come to the conclusion they don't have any other choice. And any other vehicle to do something like that, Hamas is going to regrow and obviously reattack.
Well, so be it. I mean, it's almost inevitable that was going to have to happen, I guess. Biden's interfering with it, notwithstanding. But it makes a lot of sense. General Keane, I want to thank you. Really, full half hour of great analysis. We appreciate it very, very much. Great to hear your voice, sir. Folks, we're going to take a break, and we're going to do some stock market work on the other side. It's the Trump trade. It's the Trump rally.